As an entity, we've only been around for about 4 years, but we inherited the structures and technology systems of 3 predecessor entities. And we had to do so with systems that were very clunky and tended to take a waterfall development approach. It was antagonistic. We've been pivoting towards this idea of speed, flexibility, and agility. Decomposition is right at the centre of our enterprise architecture. We want to use best-in-breed products and connect them together in a smooth transition so that we can get the data transfer between systems, we can get reporting that's seamless. That makes not only our business composable, but it also makes us composable between agencies. For me, that's what a composable government should look like. It's being able to move those functions around easily. It's about being able to operate in a way that achieves those government objectives.
Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. This podcast is inspired by the Wall Street Journal best-selling book with the same title, written by Workato CEO Vijay Tella. If you would like a free copy of the book, be sure to listen for a special offer at the end of today's episode. All right, so today we have with us Tristan Cox. I'm very excited about this one, actually. So Tristan, you're the Chief Digital Officer of the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission in Australia. So for folks here who are not in Australia, I mean, in Australia, I think people know, but you're a regulatory body, just like the SEC regulates the markets, FDA, like medication, FAA, aviation. What you do is you regulate elderly care in Australia. And it's obviously a topic matters to all of us, not just Australia. So maybe to start off with, tell us a little bit about your commission, Royal Commission, that is. How did that all start? How has it evolved over time? What's your mission?
Thanks, Markus. And I think it's good to clarify from the start that there's a few things going on in what you've said. There was a Royal Commission into aged care, and a Royal Commission is basically a government investigation as to how the sector's performing. And in this case, that was driven by some really significant and serious events. There was a facility called Oakden where it had this, kind of edge combination of mental health and aged care, which is really complex. Unfortunately, it was found there were some really poor care behaviours that took place there, and that led to this Royal Commission. The commission that I work for is the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. So one of the outcomes of the Royal Commission was to form this single regulator. Prior to that, there were 3 different regulators regulating a different part of the sector. One did complaints, one did the on-site assessment of quality, that sort of thing. And by bringing them all together, it eliminated the information boundaries between those groups and started moving towards what's now a very unified approach. So our staff go into aged care facilities and they look at their charts and they interview people and they do a whole bunch of stuff which essentially evaluates the care of that individual against a whole set of standards. And where there's a finding of non-compliance, they have to make decisions and progress some kind of compliance action.
Yeah, perfect. No, I think it's good. I mean, it's a topic I think everyone probably listening in can associate with. We all have parents. I mean, it's not. With mental care becoming such a big topic today, you can see why this is something you need to look at. And so, it's great. It's something that feels like it's important to society. So let's talk about. So you're the Chief Digital Officer of this commission. And, just looking on LinkedIn, I mean, you have a fascinating story. I mean, maybe to start with, you actually studied archaeology. All right. So we obviously want to know about your background. We want to know where you arrived becoming the Chief Digital Officer of the commission. And, don't forget about that process improvement piece in the middle, because that's something you and I have in common. So, I'm actually really curious about your journey to Chief Digital Officer.
Yeah, as am I, to be honest with you, Marcus. I certainly didn't see this future for myself when I was in high school. Can I ask you a question? You're from Germany. About when people make decisions to go to university and become an astronaut or something, how old are people generally when they make that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I don't think it's like that anymore, but I was part of that generation. I guess I'm dating myself now. We used to have 13 years in school. So I was 19 already. And then I was also one of the last ones to had to do the mandatory national service. So really that adds another year. So I made my decision when I was 20 years old. But I totally get it. My daughter had to make her decision to go to college here in the US at 16. And it almost felt like it was an unfair thing to make it at that age. It's not, doesn't feel right.
I agree, and I've met a lot of people in my travels, and particularly in Europe, where they leave high school, they experience the world, and then this is the path I want to go on, and they're all a bunch of these people are going to university or college in the States at in their mid-20s. And I think at that age, you invariably do better. Like your mind is really an adult learner now, rather than in that hybrid. At the end of high school, you're in this really strange neurological zone where you're halfway between child type learning and adult type learning. So everyone's very confused. And yeah, you have to make this decision. In Australia, you tend to go straight from high school to university, which is what I did. And I actually did a commerce degree. I just followed the masses. Oh, yeah, let's do, it's commerce, it's finance, it's all, let's all make lots of money. And I really, really hated it, to be frank. And it wasn't actually the content. 20 years later, I did my MBA. It's finance, it's commerce, it's economics, it's all. The problem for me was having a relationship between the subject content, what I wanted to do in life, and making those connections. And so later on, I did pretty well in my MBA. And one of the things that I studied there was process improvement. I became qualified in Lean Six Sigma and went on from there. But sort of in between, I did a lot of stuff. So started with commerce, decided I didn't like it, enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in archaeology, kind of loved it. It's a very interesting field. And as a social science, I think that lends itself to where I've landed, because if I look back on my life, I've done all these things where ultimately, if you unpeel the onion skin about what you're actually doing, you're analysing process. Well, so one of my jobs that I had after leaving university was working with children with intellectual disabilities. Children, they were youths, young adults, and I would go into an open workforce workplace, and I would learn the job, document the job, and then I would train the candidate to take the pressure off the employer. And it was really, not financially worthwhile, but definitely as a human thing to do. It was wonderful. But this is what you're doing. You're looking at something, you're saying, how does it work? How can we write that down in a meaningful way? How can we unpack it and make it better? So these are the principles of process mapping and BPI exercises. And the same thing applies to any workflow. I later became a manager. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor, fascinating man, Rex Buckingham. I still see him today. He's 76 years old, who taught me the value of human interactions and how to get the best out of people, and that if you have a team where the sum of the parts is not greater than the whole, sorry, I'll say that again, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts is the goal. If you're just adding up the individual skills within that team, you'll get a number. But a real team is when you can draw out the most out of each individual and really build something that's greater. And again, these concepts, I guess, can be applied to pretty much every part of your life, business, personal, and definitely, I believe, in building and managing teams. In this case, in managing technology, software development, and all the things that you need to do as a foundation for other people, again, to do their jobs properly.
So it seems like there is definitely, kind of Tristan's world as the chief digital officer. There's a lot more than just technology, right? So there is the processes, there's all the team working together, probably teaming going on across also different people. Maybe people who are on the operations side, people who are on the technology side. Do I see that right? I mean, it seems like you actually became more technical with your journey. I mean, you didn't start out technical. Often actually you see the other way around, CIOs or IT executives who start with computer science, get into it, and then at some point almost like hit a wall because they've never been trained on all these other things like process, all that teamwork and, how to work with the business side or the operations people and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's correct, actually. I mean, I've always been interested in technology. I did do a minor stream in tech at university. Frankly, learning how to code in Ada seemed fairly pointless to me at the time, so I didn't really go forward with it. But I did keep a passion for technology. I think at one point I wanted to be an engineer, and then I realised that my maths isn't that good, but my conceptual strength is very, very high. So I follow a lot of different technologies, environmental technology, space technology, not just out of interest, but out of a genuine connection to the scientific principles. And I often use it, actually. So when I speak to my teams, I often use analogs for what I'm trying to talk about. And often, currently in the space industry, I use SpaceX because if we talk about things like, rapid prototyping, and having the courage to take risks and try things, that's exactly what SpaceX do, and successfully. As a chief digital officer, as opposed to a chief technical officer, I surround myself with people who are technical experts, and this is part of my philosophy. Is this sort of more flat hierarchy where I lever those people around me. The strengths that I bring are those about that conceptual architecture, the overall bird's eye view of the world, making connections and bringing it all together under people, process and systems. And I think that's the modern, way, is to make sure that we're not dealing just with technology for technology's sake. We're looking at the organizational objectives and outcomes. We're human-centered in design, and we are, striving towards a technology base that is a genuine facilitator instead of a hindrance. I mean, I grew up in the days when, the IT guy was, no one wanted to talk to him. He didn't want to talk to anyone else, that was for sure. And the technology was always a barrier to achieving your goals. Whereas now it is an enabler, and will become more so, I think. I don't quite have the same fervor for the AI trend everyone else does. I believe it will get there. I believe right now it's probably creating more problems than not.
That makes sense. All right. So, okay, cool. This is all super interesting. Let's kind of take a look at the here and now. So, understand the commission is growing, is expanding. Actually, you're kind of like right ahead of a new Aged Care Act that's going into effect July 1st. So with all of this backdrop, what does that mean for your job as the chief digital officer? What are your IT challenges? I was just smirking a little bit there on the archaeology. I'm not sure if archaeology is that one trait you need to dig through all the legacy systems you have in the all the layers in the commission or in government. Probably not. But so what does a day look like? How do you look at success in your job, and what's friction maybe?
Yeah, look, I think the environment's important to understand. I mentioned the fact that as an entity, we've only been around for about 4 years, but we inherited the structures and technology systems of 3 predecessor entities. And so in any of those kinds of amalgamations, you're going to see a lot of, rough periods where you're trying to pick the right platform and move forward. And while I've been with this organisation since 2019, I've only been the Chief Digital Officer for 2 years. And so some of these settings were already established, moving towards a common platform, that sort of stuff. I did a lot of work in operational process and in the core case management system redevelopment. When I became Chief Digital Officer, it was, I guess, a recognition that where we'd come from was a very substantial change. And with continuous, development of legislation and of our own regulatory posture, there was more change. And what we could foresee was that change was inevitable. It was never going to stop. And this is probably true of every organisation. It was really apparent to us. And so we settled on this principle of enterprise architecture that pivoted around the need for speed, flexibility, and agility. We have to be able to move fast. We have to be able to react to events or changes in what we call regulatory posture. And we had to do so with systems that were very clunky and tended to take a waterfall development approach. And it just was antagonistic. Our organizational objectives did not match our architectural settings. So we've been pivoting towards this idea of speed, flexibility, and agility. We're picking systems that are subject to rapid development using an agile build process, that have basically an ability to change direction, have capabilities that are both known and unknown. We need to forecast into the future the sorts of capabilities we might need and make sure we're purchasing systems that have that sort of flexibility. And we need to also to be able to recognise that we need to be able to move faster. I think in the book you call it plasticity. That we need to be able to have the potential to rapidly change in a way that fits our direction, because our direction is changing now. It's going to change further. I'll guarantee as soon as there's a new act that there'll be someone who drafts that act, and then a week later we'll be going, oh, that's new. It's not all foreseeable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, I have to tell you, so I meet with, IT leaders around the world. I meet with government IT leaders around the world, and I don't know, forgive my directness, but many of them are playing catch up, right? So they're what you highlighted there. I think it makes sense to people. I think in politics things change. In government, things change and evolve. And so I see that growth mindset in you that, as you mentioned, is talked about in the book. It was really refreshing when I met you in Australia to see that, but I don't see that in the majority of government IT leaders around the world. I do not. So I'm just curious, what's driving you? How is that? I think the flexibility, agility, it matters to, definitely where we are here, Silicon Valley. You can't survive without it. It's it changes, every month. But I think it's true for many industries. Maybe some are still fairly stable. People think of government as often maybe the most stable, but I think you're highlighting is right. That's really not true. What's driving you? What does success look like for you? What would you, if you left a legacy there in as a chief digital officer, what would it be?
Well, that's a good one. I was going to roll back a second though. There's some foundational things to managing organizational information technology, desktop software, support security analytics, all that sort of stuff. And I think we can get too easily captured in that as the sole focus. And especially the security angle, where people are just trying to keep their head above the water. And I think because of that, there's this loss of sight around what the future looks like. There's so much focus on the day-to-day, and my gut feeling is that that's where most technology leaders are in government. They're very risk averse. It's the nature of the position they're in, the organisation they're in. So there's not kind of the I guess your term, that the mindset for dynamic change. It's hard sometimes to bring people along, and then we can look up to senior leaders in an organisation and in government, and you'll find, I think, the same conservative approach, and that's not wrong, in the sense that we're often protecting extremely sensitive information or data, or we're performing functions that have a zero tolerance for failure, and so that in itself is a constraint. And so if I look at the role I'm doing right now, I'm managing all of that, and I'm trying to look forward and find a way to leave a new technology to move away from that framework. And the two can feel a little disconnected. You almost have to, I've got 5 separate programs of work in place right now. I could show you the diagram I've got about how they all connect and support each other, but that's too complicated for anyone to understand. Let's go back to process mapping. I've once mapped out the entirety of our aged care sector. So across something like 22 different entities across 3 levels of government and the private sector and the individuals. Everyone usually forgets the individuals in the mapping. They are the outcome. They are central to everything, and their customer journey, if it's not right, is the greatest barrier to them receiving the care they need. But the complexity of a process map like that is it's undigestible. I got to say, even to me, and I can read it, it's not something that's useful to promote change. So what I do is I try and bring it down to smaller chunks, and I try and explain it in context of other chunks, and I try and therefore bring people along, my staff, but also my the executive I report to. I try to make it approachable so that it's you can lead them on a journey and say, there's these elements here, here's a pain point, we can focus on that pain point and we can achieve some efficiency dividends, whatever. But then when we see it as a whole, here's a great disconnection. Here's a disconnection between 2 major parts of the business systems, and what I can demonstrate from there, and that kind of pain point is a far more significant shift in architecture, moving away from interface dependency agreements to open APIs as a solution for that problem. And then I can use that solution to say, in order to achieve this solution effectively, we need to introduce new ways of working, new technologies, a new automation mindset, if you would, although I don't think I've ever called it that. I don't want to get done for plagiarism. So that framework is driving towards a longer term organizational objective while being mindful of current pressures. And so if I look at what's driving me, there's an end point there where it'll become boring, where everything's in place, everything's working, we've got a continuous improvement cycle, we're best in breed. We have a goal to be a world-class leader in regulation. Once we're there, I'll almost certainly leave, because at that point, while there's always opportunities, it'll be far less complex, far less transformational. And so it should be self-sustaining. That's the intent. And then I'm happy to walk away, because I've achieved what I wanted in that longer term. In the shorter term, what's driving me is probably what drives most people in our commission. We have a lot of staff who are super dedicated because of the client group we're talking about. We're going to be there one day, Markus. So I'll be in an aged care facility with you, and we'll be like harassing the nurses, and they'll be getting lost and they'll be chasing us around the facility. I would like to know that when I'm there, that nurse has my best. That nurse is trying to see that I have the best quality life that I can in whatever state of mind I am in. And So if we can set up all the systems to help support that, then, there's a great outcome for everyone.
So it's self-motivated. It's you're doing it for yourself. So that when the day comes, you're going to be in good hands.
I'm doing it for current elderly people, my friends' elderly people, my own parents, and I'm doing it for you and I, and one day for our kids. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, it's an interesting sector because often it's the children that pick up any slack in that system, and there's nothing wrong with that, but not everyone can do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's totally. It makes total sense. So what's the from a technology standpoint? It seems to me like, and I would agree with the complexity. I mean, complexity is almost like paralyzing, in a way, right? It seems like the best that technology can do to help you and the commission and your mission and so on is to simplify, to reduce some of this complexity, and to really, through technology and also through architectural principles, to kind of simplify, get maybe more people involved, reduce the IT from the person you talked before, like somewhere in the cellar down there who knows everything but doesn't know how to talk to anybody or doesn't like to talk to anybody, but get it into all of our hands. So, I mean, you're a big proponent of low code, right? It seems like that's probably part of that simplification mission. And then also, maybe you can talk a little bit about low code, but also from an architecture perspective, when we chatted in Canberra, we talked about enterprise or composable enterprise. So, talking to a composable government agency, right? What that'll look like. It's a Gartner thing that they put out there, but being able to decompose pieces and so on is about simplifying and modularizing and so on. Tell me a little bit what you see in your powers and how can IT help you simplify?
Look, low code is not always possible. There are times when we just need someone to do something highly technical. But as products are evolving towards no code solutions, it means that some very smart guys in a room have already done that hard work and created a product that enables you then to just use your logical skills to create for example, a workflow. And I think this is the heart of it, that whether you understand a particular coding language and all of its syntax and grammar, you can now know less of that or even none of that. But you still have to have the mindset of a coder. You still have to have this logical way of building something in a way that's going to be operable. And so for me, that's what low code does. It takes a person like myself. I have an affinity for technology. I have a logical brain. I can quickly learn how to use new products. And then I can lever the inherent power of those products to achieve my objective without having to go and learn Java or Python or anything like that. And I can write a few lines of script. You'd never want to use it. So it's enough for me to understand the mechanics and principles behind things, but I'd be terrible at doing it in real life because I don't have that experience and that, I think coders generally, their brains work a lot faster too as I get older. I find myself less able to keep up with some of these younger guys that are sitting at their desk and talking at about 1,000 words a second. And this is good because there's a limit to how many of those people there are out there. Trying to attract people with really specific technical skills into particularly a government agency at government agency rates, it's very challenging. And so products that enable people with the right mindset to rapidly learn how to use a product to achieve an objective is absolutely the answer wherever we can do it. So that's one thing. Decomposition is right at the center of our enterprise architecture. We want to use kind of best in breed products and connect them together in a transition a smooth transition, an easy connection, so that we can get the data transfer between systems, we can get reporting that's seamless. And actually, the Workato product is what we landed on to do that. I know this isn't supposed to be about, promoting your actual product, but it has all of these attributes. It has an ability to be used in a very powerful and flexible way. And I'll go back to my 3 principles. Is it fast? Absolutely. We can develop stuff really quickly in there. Does it have flexibility? Yes. We can do all sorts of things with it that, in fact, we're discovering some things that weren't even in our original intent, but we're playing with those things just to understand the boundaries. It's got ETL capabilities. It creates that position point for us where we can be flexible or plastic in the future, because we know that there are systems that don't even exist yet that we'll want to connect to. And in fact, what we've recently achieved with our sister agency, the Department of Health, is that we've landed on a federated architectural model. And this is really significant, because by using an open API framework and connecting those systems more deeply, we are able to eliminate a whole heap of pain around keeping our builds in total synchronicity. We can go at our own pace and then open up connections and do that bit, or we can move ahead with stuff and there's a bit of a lag to someone else ingesting that information. So it's really enabled by a strong integration layer. That makes not only our business composable, we can block and stack a bunch of different products to meet one objective, and we can do it in a way that might not even be visible to the user experience, although sometimes it is. But it also makes us composable between agencies, and I think that's the key here. Government has this habit, as is its privilege, to shake up agencies and move around functions, which is exactly why the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission was formed. It was what we call a machinery of government change. And this happens periodically, usually when there's a change of government, but it can even happen out of that cadence. And what that means is that functions often move radically. They get ripped out of one agency and put into another agency. And so the more flexibility we can put around those systems, the more composable we can make them, the easier that gets. You can be platform agnostic. If it's cloud-based and it's secure, it might not be much change at all in terms of moving the functional tools from one domain to another set of controllers. And that's not something that's really on anyone's radar. It's something that just gets managed as those change points come up, because they're not planned really. I mean, they usually get announced and then that's it. You've got a few months to try and enact. But yeah, for me, that's what a composable government should look like. It's being able to move those functions around easily. It's about being able to operate in a way that, again, achieves those government objectives as rapidly as possible with as little pain as possible. And that's what decomposition gives you.
Yes, I mean, it's really cool to see that you're making use of Workato. To me, look, Workato is a very modern product. So I think naturally we started our journey with like technology companies and so on. People who are very much like cloud-based and all of this. But then, when we talk, it becomes apparent to me, at least, and said like, all right, so we can add some value. We can surely add value and make the already super agile tech companies even more agile. But then you look and say like, oh, wait a second, there's a space like government that's, so important to all of us. Again, and it becomes clear when we talk about aged care and we all think of us like, hey, it's going to happen to every single one of us. We want to get this right. And then you say like, oh, Workato can actually maybe even add more value there than in like the super already agile tech companies, right? Because you're struggling with finding like super technical resources that your whatever, Atlassian or Slack or whatever, they have no problems getting those people. But so low code is actually more important. You are probably, as you pointed out, like people can change your world through a new act or some political decision pretty quickly. And so you got to deal with that. And, it's important for that. And then obviously for me is obviously this, it's a different thing if Workato adds value to something meaningful to society than, to another company, ABC, right? Or XYZ or whatever it might be. That's all nice and everything, but it kind of makes you feel better if you're, adding value to something meaningful. It's actually, I mean, so curious about this, Tristan. So you referred to the book a couple times. What's your big takeaway on it? Like, what resonates it? I mean, it seems like this does matter to government, like very much so.
Yeah, and look, the greatest resonance there is this. It's the same thing that I mean, when I did my Masters of Business Administration, I had the privilege of being educated by a gentleman called Max Zornada. He's probably one of the most, qualified and established Lean Six Sigma professionals in the world. And it sort of opened my eyes to something which sort of resonates with the book, is that we do this stuff already. What those kinds of frameworks do is give us labels for things that we probably do subconsciously. We've never labeled it. We might not have quite as complex or sophisticated a way of doing it, but we do this. We take a new challenge and we break it down into component pieces. It's like the bit about, I don't want to sweep the floor of a whole factory, but I can sweep 3 square meters at a time, and then I'll do another 3 square meters, and then it's all done, and I'll do it in this pattern, and I'll, that's that guy with the broom's mapping out a process, and he's setting himself PIs within that process and timeframes, and this is the heart of process engineering. So what my studies in Lean Six Sigma gave me was a whole heap of labels that sort of resonated with, I used to do this. I used to go into a work site and I used to teach, a kid how to use a broom. And I'd go into, I'd run infrastructure projects in the central desert of Australia. And what I was doing was developing process and systems and where people fit in those systems to achieve an outcome. And that's still what I do. The context changes, the people change, the goals change, but if you break it right down, some of the tools that we use to solve, technology problems are the same tools that we use to analyze the space shuttle disaster, root cause analysis, all that sort of stuff. So the book really does the same thing for me. It reinforces views I already hold. And that was really clear and I guess somewhat surprising as I read it, is that, there is this consistency between my existing mindset and the philosophy of the book. But I really do think that anyone reading it with the right frame of mind, being open, being willing to explore ideas, anyone that reads it in that frame of mind is going to pick up the conceptual tools that they probably already know, and it'll help them refine those conceptual tools to be really pointed and to, I think, reasonably quickly achieve outcomes more quickly than they previously did.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, look, first of all, I want to thank you for spending time here with us today. Kind of makes me really think, I've did multiple specials on, financial services, for example. Interestingly enough, maybe for you, the whole system thinking, the process improvement mentality, not such a big deal in financial services. I think those people have a lot to catch up on, to be honest. The people that seem to be doing well there are people like yourself who have, some Lean Six Sigma background from maybe working at some industrial company at some point and then get put into financial service. But the financial services itself, the industry, it's not their strength. I mean, it's really cool to see that that you're doing this in government. I don't know how big that process improvement movement is in government. I can only hope for something like aged care quality and safety. It seems like the right thing to do. It seems like this is the kind of stuff you want, just as reliable as your Toyota engine. You know what I mean? Like I think I think the process part is important. I think the use of technology, not just for technology's sake, but maybe to simplify things and give this thinking, the system thinking, some legs, make it easier to implement it. I think that's what kind of matters. And then the scale mindset is really about how do you can get almost like everyone in the agency to think that way, right? Because once you do that, then good things happen.
Yeah, and that foundational step, those first 2 years I spent with the Commission building what we call the operational digital toolkit. There's no fancy technology involved at all. We leave basic SharePoint functions. SharePoint has some features, it's got some pain points, but it's available to everyone. It's already there. That the only cost involved was me and a couple of developers. And when I say developers, I mean not SharePoint developers. And what we have there now is a library of content that can be accessed by any user, and it's designed in a way that they can go straight to their functional area. They can dive straight into whatever phase of a process they're in. They can dive into the process map or the standard operating procedure or the tools and templates or the system guides. So it's designed around this idea that we start with a process, and then if you're new to the organization, you'll start diving in from the top, and you'll get all your training and stuff. But for most users, they're somewhere else along the continuum of they're too totally proficient that don't need to look at anything. And it might just be simply, I need that template. Click, click, click. There's the template. Because what you've done is familiarize themselves with their own process journey. Developing that tool, I think, was a really important precursor, because what it does is expose for real what the business is trying to do. The mantra that I've tried to train my staff and my users with is, if you can't map out a process, then you don't understand your process and you don't know what you're doing. And so if we unpack it on that basis and help them understand their own complexity and document it, that's the start of a system journey. That's the start of the same thing you'd do as a business analyst going in and trying to understand the development of a new case management system or some other things. So it's not always easy. Like some people say, I'm not visual. I don't do process maps. I want a gigantic document. And for some people, that's more true than of others. But at the end of the day, human brains work in a highly visual way. And so I think that visualization of a process is critical. And also kind of how your tool works, by the way. I think that's one of the reasons why its low-code solution is so effective, is because of the user interaction that's involved. So anyway, look, we could probably talk for another couple of hours around various things. But
no, it actually maybe one last thought here on my end, just some recommendation or warning. I think what you did there, I think you just did it naturally, because this is where you came from, to do these process maps and do think about this first is really key. Anyone listening in the audience, I talked to a gentleman just the other day who actually came the other way, and he said like, well, Markus, I thought Workato was low code, no code, so I don't really need to think about my process much. I just go into it. I map it out in Workato, and then if I don't like it, I can quickly change it and so on. And they got disappointed. And, just a warning, I mean, just buying Workato itself, that's not going to solve all world's problems. You do need to go through this exercise. You need to think about the processes. I think, as you rightly said, if you haven't mapped them out, you don't understand them. And you really should not, start using Workato on processes you don't understand. It'll probably be a disappointment. And you won't realize the whole value that the technology actually can give you. But listen, Tristan, thank you so much. This was a really kind of cool view into government, into the world of a regulator, and how it actually looks awfully similar to what other enterprises, companies, and so on face out there, and kind of gets me really intrigued about the future, what Workato can do for government also. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Markus. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you like what you heard, we do have a special offer for you. If you share this or any other episode of the podcast on LinkedIn with the hashtag TNAM for the new automation mindset, that's TNAM, our team will reach out to you and make sure you get a free hardcover copy of the book by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.